You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and thanks for downloading episode number 119 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail. I'm still in the UK, travelling around and visiting with friends and relatives. It's great, but I do miss recording at home. I know where everything is and I'm organised enough to get these shows out on time to you. Last week, for the first time, I didn't post the show at my normal time of 3 a.m. Eastern. I was at another friend's house and presumed I'd be able to get it all done in 3 hours. I was nowhere near close. Got out at about 5:30 a.m., which I suppose wasn't too bad. Today, I'm at a seaside hotel in Christchurch, Hampshire, and trying to warm my hands up as I type my intro and record and then edit. I tell you, Florida has definitely affected my internal body temperature, and November in the UK is just as cold as I remembered. This week, though, we have a very distinguished guest. You know how I normally introduce the shows as episode whatever, the hiker's real name and then their trail name in brackets? Well, this week, we've still got the episode number, but no real name, just Darwin. And Darwin, as you doubtless know, is a very prolific and popular YouTuber. As you'll hear, he's a relatively new thru-hiker, but already vastly experienced. He's got some great stories, so I'm sure you're going to love hearing from him. We also have a short segment with another friend of the show, RTK himself, fresh off his AT thru-hike, and letting us know what he's been up to with his fundraising for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Finally, the next chapter in our book for the show, The Year We Seize the Day by Elizabeth Best and Colin Bowles. I've been reading and recording with fresh eyes and ears since I've done the Camino. It really does add colour to it for me when familiar names of places come up. But first, let's hear from the distinctive voice of the very articulate Darwin. Okay, we're on with Darwin of Darwin on the Trail. Hi, Darwin.
How's it going? How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. You've got a very recognisable voice, by the way. I've been watching a few of your videos, and you really sound like you, so it's pretty cool.
Your voice has also become pretty recognisable.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It's the silly Brit accent. Now, I know that you were one of the class of 2015 on the AT, and since then you've had hiking enmeshed in your soul ever since. But let's start with your upbringing and how you got into hiking in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm originally from Midwest U.S. In southern Indiana.
Okay.
And it's kind of I guess the thing to do around here. You grow up kind of being in Boy Scouts and being out in the woods and,
sure.
Whether it's camping or whatever, it's kind of ingrained in you around here. So I really grew up doing a lot of hiking, a lot of backpacking through Scouts, and then I lived kind of out in the sticks, as most people do around here. So, just grew up really in the woods and fell in love with it that way. And growing up, I think that, getting it that ingrained in me, the woods just kind of become a part of you. And then as I got older, moved into the city and kind of got away from it. And then over the years, just, fell back in love with it.
Yeah. So do you think that's part of the American literary culture as well, where, you have outdoorsmen, Davy Crockett and Chinach Cook and Hawkeye and things like that. When we were in the woods as kids, that was the sort of thing we did, running, jumping across streams and just climbing trees. Was that the same sort of thing over here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's just kind of a part of our American mythos, with people like John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt being, the great American outdoor president.
Sure.
And yeah, I just think that that's kind of part of our culture for most people. Obviously, there's parts of this country where, people never have been in the woods that live in bigger cities and stuff. But
were you a hunter? Because hunting is quite ingrained into that culture as well, isn't it?
Yeah, hunting is really big around where I grew up, but I've never been a hunter. I've actually never ever shot an animal with a gun, or even attempted to shoot an animal with a gun. Not that I have anything wrong with it. Just never was into hunting.
Yeah, I learned more about that, funnily enough, when I was on the trail. One of the guys I hiked with, he said he would never shoot an animal that he wasn't going to eat.
Yeah.
That makes some sense to me, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, there was a lot of, I guess, quote unquote, sport hunting around where I grew up. So if I was going to do hunting, it would definitely be for, eating and those purposes, which I think is what you should do. But
yeah. So you would have said you were a hiker, but without any of the long distance trails to your name. And you're also married to Snuggles, which, by the way, is an awesome name. And you had regular jobs and so on. So what precipitated your decision to hike the AT, and whose idea was it?
So I've been married for 11 years, and when me and my wife got together, she was actually, she was one of those people that grew up around here that never really went outside. She was in Girl Scouts, but never went camping. She'd never been on a backpacking trip, never really went hiking. So we had been married a couple of years, and then I just kind of got this sense that I needed to get back in that world and be, outdoors more.
So what was pulling you back into it then? Was there something you saw, you did, or something that was going on in your life that made you feel the need to get back into it?
I really don't know what it was. I think that, we lived in the city, for as big of a city as what we grew up in. And I really don't know what it was, to be honest. I was racing triathlon for about 8 years. So we were doing a lot of traveling on the weekends, going to races out of town. And I think it was a mix of travel and then thinking about, well, what if we travel and go on a hiking trip? Or what if we travel and go on a camping trip? Right. And then, we started doing that. And then we started going to races and camping at the race, versus getting a hotel room. And then it just kind of re-sparked that love. My wife got, more into it. She really liked it. So I kind of started slowly introducing other aspects of that, whether it was backpacking or doing a day hike. And over a while, we just both really fell in love with backpacking. And
man, you were lucky. She might have hated it.
Yeah. Well, there was
absolutely hated it.
She did hate it. But, like anything else, over time, you kind of learn to love what, I guess what you hate, her battling it and wanting to like it. And then I guess she just eventually fell in love with it. And then what happened was we both had careers, we had a house, and we were kind of doing the 9 to 5 every day. And we were pretty happy with it. Like there was nothing wrong with it. And then I can't remember where we were, and we had heard something about the Appalachian Trail. And I had always heard about the Appalachian Trail. I knew people hiked it. Wasn't 100% familiar with the idea of the thru-hike. I knew that people went out there and spent months on the trail, but didn't know about, hiking from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia all the way and taking 4 to 6 months to do that. And then I think that it just kind of sparked something. We started pretty much investigating it. We started renting documentaries that we could find. We started grabbing books, and, that's right whenever kind of the birth of YouTube and hikers were starting to put stuff on YouTube, that we started watching stuff and really researching stuff. Spent a lot of time on whiteblaze.net, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Yeah. So that was kind of our main hub. And, like anybody else, the romance started with it, and the idea of doing this.
It's nowhere near as romantic as you think, though, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's something that the trail teaches you real fast.
So she bought into it, and was she more or less enthusiastic than you were about doing the AT? And whose idea was it to actually do the AT?
I think it was actually her. She was more interested in doing it. Like I said, I was content with owning a house and having a career, and that just kind of being the thing that you do in the Midwest. It's a very Midwestern life that you get married, you get a house, you get a career, you work it for 30 to 40 years, you retire. Like that's just kind of what people do around here. So I think I was finally starting to come into that and being like, you know what, if this is life, it's not so bad. I'm happy with the person that I'm with. I like what I'm doing. And then she's the one who kind of turned it upside down and said, well, what if we go do this thing? And that's kind of how it sparked from there. It was really her idea, and I just kind of went with it.
Well, for most people, certainly I've learned from the over 100 guests we've had on this show that This decision is very much an individual thing, although, of course, some couples and even families attempt to hike the trail.
Yeah.
Where does that joint decision come from to hike it? Because it almost, you have to be buying into the same thing, or you must be very much on the same plane as each other when you're both thinking about your dissatisfaction with your existence. But you sound like you weren't dissatisfied with your existence at all.
I wasn't really dissatisfied. I think, we had been married for a while at that point, and whenever we first got married, I was the one who wanted to take off and travel and let's go live somewhere different. Let's go live in Chicago or, Louisville, Kentucky. Let's go over to the West Coast and live somewhere. And just because I've never been a huge family person, and she's much more ingrained into her family, and she never wanted to do that. So, I kind of tried that for years, and she wasn't really interested, and that was cool. So whenever she finally kind of stepped out and said, "Hey, let's go," I was like, "Okay, let's go." And yeah, I wasn't going to argue. I was like, well, I spent years trying to do this. So yeah, let's do it. And, didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into as far as what it would end up doing to me. I just thought that we were going to go do this trip and that was going to kind of be it.
How did you research it? You said you read about it somewhere, but how did you research what to do? You said you did whiteblaze.net as well. Did you learn from mostly that or most of the YouTube videos, or did you kind of make it up as you went along?
Well, the first thing, I don't think I've ever actually put any credit to it. So it's good to kind of finally do that. One of the first things that we had watched or seen, obviously we started just reading, your typical, what is the Appalachian Trail? What is a thru-hike? Wikipedia kind of stuff. Yeah. Good old Google. And then we had a friend who had actually went out and they went to hike a big section of it through the Smokies. And they started talking about the idea of the thru-hike. They had met some thru-hikers, and they had watched a documentary called Trek. Have you ever seen it?
Possibly. I've seen so many documentaries. I can't recall, to be honest with you.
So it's one that was done in the early 2000s. It was 4 friends that went out to hike the trail. And it's kind of like the modern YouTube video, but they shot it and made it a documentary. It's just their hike. And we had rented that from our library and watched it. And it was like at the end of that documentary, it was just like hooked, absolutely hooked. And after that, it was just, we found out about White Blaze. We started finding books from the library. We had bought a couple guides off the internet to start reading older guides. And then I don't even know how I wound up doing it, but, I started finding a couple people on YouTube that were making videos. Loner on the AT. He had, I think, some of the first videos where he was filming his hike. Yeah.
We had him on the show. He's a great guy.
Yeah. And I remember watching those and just being like, oh, man, this is so cool. And then, you have cats like Joe Brewer with Backcountry Banter, who started making videos early on about kind of the classic hiker YouTube video where he's giving tips and tricks and showing you how to make a Tyvek wallet and how to, make a tarp or something. And this whole idea of making your own gear and going out there and living for 4 to 6 months and being hiker trash. Like it just, oh man, it was so romantic. It was like, oh, this sounds like something totally different. I got to try it. That's really where it came from. That's how we got hooked.
So how did you get all your gear together? I suspect the gear you hike with now, and I know you've just finished the PCT, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I know you just finished that. What's your gear like now compared to what it was like when you started the trail in 2015? Very,
very different. So, to a degree, I've always been a big gear geek, no matter what it is that I'm doing. I recorded music for quite some time, ran a small recording studio out of my house. So I was a big geek when it came to instruments and recording equipment. Same thing with triathlon, bikes, and running shoes. So that was the big fun thing for me about backpacking was I found out oh man, there's all these different tents and backpacks and stoves. So I pretty much spent a year doing kind of what all hikers do now, which is buying a ton of gear and doing pack shakedowns without ever even doing the thru hike. So, and just absolutely obsessed over it. So, the gear that I started the AT with, I hiked with an Osprey Atmos 65 pack. Mm-hmm. But it was pretty minimal. I think that my base weight, on that hike, I think starting the AT was 16 or 18 pounds.
That's good.
Yeah. And at the time, I had never heard of people going under 10 pounds. So at the time, I was floored that I could get it that light, at 16, 18 pounds. So It's definitely changed over the year, but I think that I've always, from the get-go, kind of been a little bit of a minimalist when it comes to backpacking. Um, just because I like the idea of that.
So what was your base weight on the PCT this year then?
I kind of changed my pack. So what I started with was, let's see, 11 and a half, 12 pounds.
Wow.
And then I finished, I had swapped out my pack and some stuff over the last
Did you take a bear box? A bear canister?
Bear can. Yeah, I did use one through the High Sierra. So, where you're required to use it. But after that, yeah, I definitely pitched it. And then I ended up my hike. It was just over 10 pounds is what I ended.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. So you got on the trail, you got on the AT, you and Snuggles. When did you actually start in 2015?
Let's see. We would have started March 9th is whenever we started our hike.
Pretty early.
Yeah, pretty early. And we thought like, well, let's start early because, we had heard about the quote unquote bubble.
Yes.
So we wanted to make sure that we weren't too wrapped into the bubble. We still wanted to hike with other people and experience trail culture, but we didn't want the masses. And, it wasn't bad. Really, during our hike, there was a lot of people on the trail, but we never did have the huge crowds that, a lot of people talk about now.
Right. But you didn't actually finish it in 2015. And so what got you off the trail?
Yeah. So, man, what a story. We were in Pennsylvania, and I had gotten bit by a handful of ticks. And, growing up in the Midwest, I've had a ton of tick bites, had a ton of ticks that had to dig off me. So didn't really think anything of it. And when we got into New York, I started feeling really, really sick. And I ended up having to get off the trail because I had a huge fever. Felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and went to the hospital and got diagnosed with ehrlichiosis, which is a form of Lyme's disease. So I got the dreaded Lyme's.
Is it? I've never heard of ehrlichiosis, so I'm amazed I even just said that.
Yeah. And I actually think that I pronounce it wrong. I've been told it's pronounced differently.
Right. So that is Lyme disease, but that is a different form of it, you say?
Yeah, it was funny. I get all this blood work done, and the doctors come in the room, and they're like, good news is, we don't have what we thought you had, which was meningitis of the brain. And I was like, well, great.
Jeez.
And they're like, but you do have ehrlichiosis. And I was like, what is ehrlichiosis? And they're like, it's actually really interesting. It's Lyme disease that typically animals get. So they usually find it in dogs, which is really rare for a human to get. And I was like, oh, great.
Lucky are you?
Yeah. So essentially it's the exact same symptoms as Lyme's disease. It does the same things to you, except for you do not get the bullseye rash that Lyme's is so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had it for weeks and didn't know because I was looking for the sign of the rash, and I was feeling bad, but I'm looking around. I'm like, well, I don't have a rash, so I must not have Lyme's. It must be just something else. But yeah, I had that. We were off trail for a little bit. I got treated with doxycycline, that whole fun thing. We got back on the trail and got into Massachusetts. And I broke a tooth. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, in Great Barrington, Mass.
That's not a good look, by the way, either, is it?
No. Luckily, it's back a little bit, so you can't really see it. Broke a tooth, and so I went to an emergency dentist, and they wanted to either cap it or whatever, or they wanted to pull it out. I couldn't afford to get a root canal and stuff done. So I'm like, just pull it. And they told me that it wouldn't be another week until the dentist that could pull it would be in. So we were going to have to hang out in that town for a week. And we got back to the hotel room that night. And then my wife found out that her grandmother was passing away and only had a couple days to live.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it was just like, 3 punches, just straight to the heart or the mouth or.
So you had to finish in Massachusetts then. So you didn't have too far to go.
No, and
how did that make you feel? I mean, how did you feel about having get off the trail? What did it do to you?
Oh man, it killed us. That was I've talked about it a lot in videos. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to deal with. Was putting all that blood, sweat, and tears into a hike and getting. I think what that point is like 1,600 miles, and just having to get off like I was going to have to get this tooth messed with. We were going to have to go back to Indiana to bury a loved one. And it was just, the trail was definitely trying to get us off of it.
Did you ever have any doubt that you'd go back in the year later?
Not at all. The plan was to get off the trail just for like a month or two and then try to go back and finish it. And at that time, by the time we would have been able to get back, it would have been too late to be able to finish in Baxter. So we just kind of bided our time, and we ended up going back less than a year later. So we went back in May of 2016.
So you were pretty by yourself, weren't you, in May? Because there couldn't be many people who had got to Massachusetts by May.
No, there was a handful of people on the trail that we hiked with that were northbounders. Yeah, we were really surprised. But for the most part, it was definitely a different hike. And, as awful as it was to have to get off the trail and come back, it was kind of, it was a good thing because we got to experience the trail in a different way. A lot of times when hikers get up to that point in Massachusetts, they start going through the burnout stage where they're just ready to be off the trail. And you hear a lot of hikers say like, I wish I could go back and rehike that last section because I was wore out and it was really hard for me to enjoy. So it was nice going in with a fresh mind and fresh legs. And knowing
that was one
what
of my questions
expect.
about the vibe you get, because there is a class of 2016, a class of 2015. I was the class of 2014.
Yeah.
So, was there a different vibe when you went back? Not only with just yourself, but with the people you were with.
Yeah, a little bit different. We definitely had our tramway in 15. So one weird thing for us was we went back and, we'd get to a shelter or a camp spot at the end of the night. And it was just like natural instinct to like, we were waiting on our friends to kind of show up, like waiting on my buddy Rube or Cider to kind of come around the corner and be there. So it was weird adjusting to that. Fun enough, though, we stayed in contact with our tramway the entire time we were out there. They sent us boxes, and we talked to them a lot on the phone. That being said, it was definitely a different vibe, but because we hiked a lot in 15 with other people, this time was really just me and my wife, me and Snuggles. So we kind of got to experience the trail in a completely different way, just as a couple and without a whole lot of people around us. So.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people talk about the physicality of hiking a long distance trail, and you certainly do in your videos, a few of your videos. Mm-hmm. But where do you pitch the balance between the physical and the mental side of things?
I think that, I always think I change my percentages here, but I think that the trail to me is about 80-90% mental. I think that if you can hike the first 100 miles of a long distance trail, you physically have the trail. Yeah. There's nothing that you're not going to be able to do. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. It's still going to wear you out, but man, it's so much mental for so many reasons. It's just an emotional roller coaster the whole time you're hiking. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't realize when they go into a long distance hike. And it's why I think a lot of people aren't successful with the hike, because it's just not something, it's same with me. It's not something I ever thought about, I came off of racing triathlon for 8 years, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to blow through this trail. I'm physically super fit, and
of course you are.
And then I got out there, and it was just a totally different game. Physically, absolutely, I had it. But mentally, it just wasn't expecting that.
I'm sure. So when did the YouTube channel start? Because as I understand it, you didn't. I presume you filmed obviously in the AT, but you didn't actually start the channel till you got back, did you? What was the reason for starting it?
It kind of a funny story, actually. Before we went to start the AT in 15, I had no desire to do any type of social media. I had actually canceled like my personal Facebook account. I had brought down my website because I did so much social media whenever I was recording music that I was just done with it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go off the grid, kind of do that classic. I'm going to go off the grid and live in the woods for 4 to 6 months. So I canceled everything. I got rid of everything. And then we went into the hike somewhere around Pennsylvania. It's just every single day I was talking about gear, asking other people about gear, talking about specs of gear, weights, being just that guy. Everybody knows that guy on the trail. I was that guy.
You're that guy.
Yeah, totally. And I was in a conversation with one of my buddies, and he's like, man, you should start a YouTube channel and just talk about gear. And I was like, I have no desire to do that. Like, I can't talk in front of people. Like, there's no way. And let's see, towards the end of Pennsylvania, I ended up starting a Facebook page because I wanted to keep in contact with all these people, but I didn't want to have a personal Facebook page. So I started a Facebook page under my trail name, Darwin. And then the
Oh,
last name I put on the trail because I was currently on the trail, just kind of as a joke, to connect with all these people. And then when we got off of the trail in 15, I went through really hardcore post-trail depression.
yeah,
Probably, maybe, I don't want to downgrade anybody else's experience, but maybe a little harder than most people because I wasn't able to finish the thing that I wanted to do so bad.
sure.
And it really, really hit me hard. And I had remembered what my friend had said out there that I should start making videos and sharing information. So I randomly decided to shoot this video of me talking about some gear. I think it was a pair of shoes. And
Right.
I put it up on the internet. I opened up a YouTube account, called it Darwin on the Trail, just kept everything under that Facebook page.
Right.
And it was up for weeks. It got like 0 views. And then one day somebody left a comment and they said, "Hey man, great video. I think I met you out on the AT in 15." And then I started a conversation with them. And then it was just like this light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm off the trail. I can't be near it. I can't finish with the people I wanted to finish with. But through this media, I can have my trail community that I miss so much wherever I go. I'll make videos. I'll talk about the trail. Other people will talk about the trail. And I can kind of create this online hiking community that I miss so much. And
Yeah.
by doing that, that really helped me with my post-trail depression. It let me be on the trail without being on the trail.
It's interesting because obviously I do this podcast, which is what you're on now.
Yeah.
And my reasons for starting it changed over time. And I realized the impact that some of my episodes were having on my listeners. So I presume that's the same thing has happened to you.
Yeah.
Has your original reason for the channel sort of morphed into something larger or different?
No, actually, it hasn't. It's kind of the funny thing I talk about with people all the time. A lot of people just assume like, people start a YouTube channel because they want to be a YouTube personality. I joke all the time with people like, I don't want to be a YouTube personality. Like, I don't think that I am. I'm just a hiker, like talking. But no, that's always my reason for it. It always has been is kind of to create this online hiking community, to share information and give back. That was another thing is I didn't have a way to be a trail angel. I didn't have a way to do like a hiker feed or go do trail work because we were living on the West Coast at that point. So I couldn't be around the trail. So I thought, how can I give back to the trail community? Well, I remember watching people like Loner's videos, Joe Brewer's videos, Redbeard's videos.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's how I can give back. I can make videos sharing my opinion and information about gear and tips and tricks and the whole mental game and everything. So that became the reason why I did it. And still the reason why I do it today is kind of me giving back to the trail and what it's given. The trail's given me so much mentally, physically, spiritually. So
I tell you what I like about it, though. You do give your opinion, but you don't impose your opinion, do you, on people?
no, I try not to.
And it's very, very noticeable as well, the ones I've seen.
Yeah. In the beginning, actually, it might've been a little bit different. I was just kind of giving my opinion, being like, this is what you should do. And then realize that like, no, there's no one right way or one wrong way to hike.
Exactly.
So I always try to give my opinion about something, say what I like, and just kind of give the suggestion that, hey, this might work for you. But I always try to throw in there that just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It's all about trial and error and, evolving as your own hiker out on the trail.
Yeah. Now, you may already have answered this because you said you got involved in music production and so on. Because I was really struck by the cool vibe running through your films. And where'd you get the music from? Because that's not easy for people, is it?
No,
or is that your own?
You mean on the PCT trip
On
videos?
YouTube? Yeah, on the PCT one particularly, yeah.
Well, it's a lot of the music that is playing there is kind of the vibe of the music that I like the most. So the stuff that I typically listen to is like post rock, a lot of experimental, kind of airy stuff. Most people don't like it.
It sounds great on the video.
Oh, right on.
It just fits so nicely on the video. I was really enjoying it, particularly this morning, sitting outside. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and I always use the music kind of because whenever I'm experiencing the trail and I'm out there, I do listen to music a lot, and that's the type of stuff I listen to. I want to get in that mindset and let the music kind of, take me over with the scenery and let me appreciate it.
Where'd you get it from, though?
So the music service that we use is called Epidemic Sound. It's kind of it's just like big online catalog you sign up for, and then you get rights to use all their music. But man, there's like hundreds of thousands of songs. So like finding those songs, you just dig for days looking for something that sets the mood.
I was thinking exactly that. Yeah. Oh dear.
A lot of work.
The video, obviously, the first one I saw about the on your video channel was the AT, how the AT ruined your life for the better, as you say, and the discussion about post-trail depression. You gave a number of reasons, but the one that really got to me was when you said, when you get off the trail, it is all you think about.
Yeah.
Does that speak to recognition that your life wasn't full before, or does it say more about what the AT gave you?
I think maybe a little bit of both. Like I didn't realize that my life wasn't, it is how I see it now. I don't want to put out the wrong message there because,
sure,
in that video, talking about being opinionated and kind of giving your opinion and not saying this is just my opinion. That video is it walked to that border where I said that, that the world around me, like I didn't really feel connected to, and I didn't want that 9 to 5. And I got a lot of negative feedback from that video because a lot of people were like, well, I live that life and I'm totally happy with that. So
interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I was definitely happy with what I was doing, but what I didn't realize is I wanted something different. And what the trail gave me was something different. So when I got off, I didn't have that anymore. So I think it was definitely, a big part of the spiritual journey of the trail. And for me, what I find when I go out to the trail every single time, no matter what hike it is, I learn a little bit more about myself. Sure. I don't really figure out who I am or anything, but
no. But you're never going to do that.
No.
I'm 66 next month. I'm never going to do that. Trust me.
No, it's definitely a constant search. But I think that every time I go out, I'm able to dial things down and figure out a little bit more about myself. And going to do the AT, I figured out that I didn't want those things. I didn't want a house. I didn't want a career. I wanted to do everything I could and see everything I could and meet everybody that I could and inspire people, create rather than destroy. I use that term a lot.
Yes, you mentioned that when we spoke earlier. I thought it was a really good expression.
Yeah. I think that every day you wake up, you have the decision to either create or destroy. You can find something that you don't like, or your job, or family, or friends, and you can complain about it, and you can just put negativity out in the world, which a lot of us do, and I still do from time to time. It's kind of hard to get away from as a human, but. Or you can take that time and that passion, that energy, and create something to put it out in the world, whether people want it or not. And you never know what's going to come of it. It could be nothing, or you could put out some stupid YouTube videos where you talk about what you like, and
there we are.
Now, there you are. So I think it's just important to think about that every day, and like, what are you contributing to the world?
So since you ruined your life with the AT, what have your friends and family said about the changes in you? Have they noticed that you've changed?
Yeah. And, like I said early on, we come from a very Midwestern mindset town. So everybody around here kind of still doesn't understand what I do or why I do it. Doesn't understand that you can figure out a way to live in that world and use that world to kind of sustain yourself. So some people I know get it. Some people don't. And I think it's just because people around here or people that I grew up with just don't really know any different. It's not the norm around here. So, yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit of a change. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you told me before that Snuggles was one and done. She was over with the long distance hiking after the AT. But scratching the AT itch seems to have made you just eager for more.
Yeah.
What have you been hiking? You've done the PCT, you've done other hikes as well, and you've got plans for one next year as well, haven't you? Tell us about the Arizona Trail.
Yeah. So, obviously the natural progression of the thru-hiker is to do the AT, do the PCT, and then go after the Triple Crown to do the CDT. And I've been getting a lot of questions about if I'm going to hike that next. And for the record on here, no, I'm not going to hike that next. Really have no desire to hike it right now. I think that going out to hike a trail like the CDT just to get, a title as a Triple Crowner, I think is the wrong reasons to do it. And my heart's not in the trail. So
that's just your opinion, of course.
Yeah, just my opinion. Let's put that disclaimer in there. Just my opinion. Nothing wrong with doing that if that's what you want to do. So, every time I do a trail, I kind of do it for a different reason. And I really wanted to, this next hike that I do, I wanted to have a reason to kind of kind of come full circle and do what I started all this with and started making media and videos, and that's giving back to the trail community. So next year, I'm going to be going out to do a northbound through hike of the Arizona Trail, which is 800 miles. It goes from Mexico to Utah, straight through the state. I've done the northern 500 miles of the trail over the last couple of years. So I've really fallen in love with it. It's given me a lot, talking about finding out things about yourself, and the trail giving you a lot spiritually. That trail has given me a lot over the last couple of years. So I'm going to be going out doing the through hike. And then while I'm doing the through hike, I'm going to be filming a full length documentary for the Arizona Trail Association. Yeah. So.
Very cool. That's a change from just getting on, not having heard about the AT, and suddenly you're doing all these things.
Yeah.
But you've also changed your living accommodations, decided you didn't want to own a house. Where are you living now?
So me and my wife travel full time. So we live in a van, a converted van, and we just kind of bounce around between the West Coast and the East Coast. Right now we're in the Midwest.
Nice.
And yeah, we just live out of our van. We utilize a lot of national parks, a lot of national forest, a lot of BLM land. And
do you know what though? That strikes me straight back to what you said about why people, how the AT sort of ruined you for the better. You said that you were always having breakfast in a different place on the AT. You're always moving. That thing of moving is what you're doing in your life again now, isn't it?
Yeah. And that was what was hard for us. Whenever we got off the trail in 2016, we tried to get an apartment. We did get an apartment in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We lived there for a couple of years. And the whole time we were there, we were just wishing that we were, traveling. We were wishing we were somewhere near a trail. We were doing something. So it just kind of came to the point, like, what can we do and how can we alter our lives to constantly be on the move and constantly see new things and experience new things? And that's what we did. We
is that working out well for you? Do you enjoy that?
Oh man, I love it. Absolutely love it. We've actually been here, and we're in our hometown right now. We've been here for a couple of weeks, kind of getting some work done and doing some stuff. And like, I'm just itching to go. So
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, and actually, that's interesting to me because, as we said earlier, that Snuggles was one and done. So, without getting too personal, how have you and Snuggles accommodated the enforced absences from your marriage when you head out on a trail?
Great. I mean, we do our own thing. We've been married for 11 years now, and she's a one and done when it comes to, spending 4 to 6 months on a trail. I absolutely love it, but not really her thing. She'd rather take the time, stay in one place for a while. So we still try to do a lot of smaller trips together. Like we're about to head down to the Smokies next week to do some small trips. And so we try to do things together. And then when I'm off on longer hikes, she usually does her own thing. She's a writer, so she writes a lot. While I was on the PCT this year, she pretty much took a 4-month road trip up and down the West Coast.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, seeing like a lot of crazy roadside attractions and like, world's biggest ball of twine. And,
you can't go through life and missing that, can you?
No, absolutely not. Everybody's got to see that.
Exactly.
So she's always off doing her own thing. And I think it's good for us. What we've learned over the years is it's good for you to have a relationship and be close, but it's also good to kind of separate and, go about your own adventures and your own path. And then we always come back together in what's the term? The fun, or what is it?
Absence makes the heart grow
fonder.
There
it is. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So
yeah, I've got to say that's never worked for me, but okay.
It definitely works for us.
Good. Now, last couple of questions. The channel has obviously been very successful. You got close to 130,000 subscribers.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
What do you think your viewers take from your adventures? Are they looking for information from you, or are they living vicariously through you? Because I know you must get emails all the time from them.
Man, so many emails and comments. And they're all just, most are amazing. I think that I get both. I get a lot of people that contact me that tell me that they love watching my videos because, they can't do something for some reason, or that loose term. I think that everyone can. They're in a current situation where they don't feel like that they can go out and kind of do the same thing. So a lot of people that are vicariously living through the channel and what I do. And then a lot of people that are watching the videos to get information because they have been inspired to go out and do something. Like I get emails all the time from people that are going to go out and attempt a thru hike of the AT next year.
Because they saw your channel.
Yeah. Or, whether it was my channel or someone else's channel, but
even I get that. I get that from the podcast. And you know what? I think that's the most joyful thing to get, don't you?
Yeah. And that's really, again, every time I put out a video or post an Instagram photo or post something on my website, it's always to inspire someone, regardless of how it inspires them.
Right.
Now if you're the person who wants to get inspired to go do something bad, like, I'm not talking to you, but, if people to get inspired just to go out and try something different or kind of inspire someone to inspire, is really always my goal. I always want people to go out, experience something, create, and then put something else out into the world.
Cool. And when we spoke about doing this, I asked you if the channel had taken away any of the joy of hiking for you. You said straight away it didn't.
No, 100% not.
But you said you'd be doing this even if you had no channel.
Absolutely.
Do you think you'd be doing it any differently, or do you do stuff because of the channel ever?
I don't know if I really do stuff because of the channel. I definitely take, recommendations of what I should do, but if I was doing stuff because of what people wanted me to do, I'd be going to thru-hike the CDT next year.
There is that.
Yeah,
there is that. That's the best answer.
Yeah,
That's
right.
definitely the best answer.
I'm totally gonna, hang a left and go do this thing that no one's expecting me to do. So, no, I always try to do what my heart is in, and what I kind of want to bring to people, what I want to inspire people with. At the beginning of this year, before I went and did the PCT, I did a thru-hike at the Pinhoti Trail. Yeah. And whenever I announced that, the first thing was just a slew of comments. So why would you thru-hike the Pinhoti Trail? 50 something miles of that's road walking. Why? Nobody thru-hikes that trail. And I'm like, exactly. Nobody thru-hikes that trail. So if I can go create some media or go do a hike or get information about something that can help inspire other people to get out there and bring more life to that trail, that's totally what I'm going to do, because that's what it's all about. So.
Well, look, last question.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you are a planner, obviously, because you plan to do the AT and you plan to do the PCT and so on. What do you expect you're going to be doing 10 years down the line? No
clue, man.
That's the best way to be, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm a planner to a degree, but I definitely always try to live in the moment. It's very important to me, because I used to try to plan out things. I thought I knew the way my life was going to go. And what I've learned from that, over 33 years is it never works out. It's very rare that it works out what you want to do. So with the trail, the other thing that the trail has given me is it's taught me to be very in the moment, accept invitations from people to go do things, because you never know what it's going to lead to. You never know where you're going to find yourself, what good's going to come of it. So I always try to stay open to kind of anything and do anything. So I try not to plan too much. I try to get my mind set on something. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And just because I don't want to disappoint myself, but I definitely try to go with the flow.
Well, I suspect I won't be doing a podcast in 10 years' time, but I suspect you'll still be hiking in 10 years' time.
I don't know, man. We could be switching roles. You could be making YouTube videos and I could be doing a podcast.
76 is not a good look, trust me. As I will be. All right, mate. Well, look, lovely to talk to you. I really, really appreciate you spending the time, and hopefully we'll catch up one time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was great talking to you.
Okay, take it easy.
See you, bud.
Bye. Bye. Isn't it funny how people have different paths to the trail? I'm always fascinated by origin stories, which I guess is why I asked the question. How wonderful for both Darwin and Snuggles that they came to the same conclusion to start the hiking journey. Endometriosis? I'd certainly not heard of that. Pretty tough to know you've got it without the bullseye rash of Lyme disease. I've since watched a few more of Darwin's videos, and not only are they really well done, but they also put into practice that ethos that he referenced. Create, not destroy. There'll be links in the show notes for all the ways you can learn from or even contact Darwin. Now, it's on to Bruce Matson, or RTK. As many of you know, Bruce fulfilled his 44-year ambition to thru-hike the AT this year, and wonderful though that certainly was, he had a higher purpose in mind. Let's hear from Bruce and what he's been working on since he got to the top of Katahdin. Here's Bruce. Okay, I'd like to introduce an old friend of the show, actually an old friend actually for me as well, because first met Bruce, I don't know, about 2 years ago probably, Bruce, when you were talking about doing returning to Katahdin, which we eventually did as a podcast when you hiked the Appalachian Trail this year. First, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. And I was wondering, actually, have you had any additional, because we did a 1 month retrospective, as it were, after you'd finished. Have you had any additional thoughts that are starting to solidify in your mind, or do you still feel the same after a month as you did, after a couple of months as you did just last month?
Yeah, I had a chance to do a couple of talks, and more time has passed. And of course, I've had a lot of people ask a lot of questions. I continue to. It sounds, I don't know, almost overconfident or something, but I still have been very happy with my gear selections and most of my planning choices.
Sure.
If there's one larger emotional and mental reaction to the hike with the passage of time is I'm much more eager to go back out on the trail. You probably
Oh,
recall
really?
that I was really pretty tired and ready to quit by the time we finally finished. And
Yeah.
I told people, people, as I think having done a through hike, it seemed like that last 3 or 4 weeks when you're finishing with people, you're now in a smaller, more elite group of people than that started.
Sure.
And people are saying, well, you're going to go do the PCT, what's next for you? You're going to do another long trail. And I was adamant. I had no interest whatsoever in do another 2,000-mile trip. Now, I'm not saying that I want to do another long trail, but with another month behind me, the retrospective is getting rosier and rosier all the time. And the stress of the business world and the everyday life is returned. And so there's a romantic idea of going back out there because it was a lot of fun. There's a romantic idea of getting away from the daily stress. And I think as we've sort of observed, the difficult parts seem to get filtered out with the passage of time. So I've already talked to two, one section hiker who I spent a bunch of time with and a through hiker who broke his leg about their plans for next year. And I'm going to go out and hike with them for a week each.
Good for you.
I'm excited. So I love the fact that that enthusiasm for the trail has returned to me. And I'm very eager, not tomorrow, but I love looking forward to getting out there again.
That is so cool. And I kind of thought that might happen. It seems to happen to everybody, Bruce. It's almost like you can't let it go, can you? It's something I bet you think about it every single day, don't you?
Yeah, you probably do. Maybe not quite as much as you seem to, but
yeah, I do. Yeah.
I don't know if it's every day, but it's still on my mind. I'm still talking to people about giving talks, and every day you end up seeing someone you hadn't seen in the last 6 months, so you kind of relive it. But it definitely is the thinking back on it. I think more on the fonder aspects of it than some of the really tough times.
Yes, I tended to filter those tough times out as well, and that's I think what everybody does. Yeah. Now we wanted to talk about something else because this wasn't just your hike. This was obviously the important thing that you wanted to do for all those years, 44 years. But you really wanted to give back to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, particularly, and trying to raise money for them. And I know that you were you did raise some money, and you were raising money, and you continue to. So tell us about this, because this wasn't just for the duration of the hike, was it?
No, it wasn't terribly specified at the time, but I always thought that it would be useful to try to use the time when I returned to help raise money, because I had a very ambitious goal. We're trying to raise over $200,000, which is a very large number for, at least for the ATC. And we got a really nice start. We put together a very $100,000 matching fund, and we had a lot of early activity before I got on the trail. We had a send-off event, which you were kind enough to come and host for me.
Yeah.
And, we did pretty well that night and the weeks around there. And I think we're probably somewhere at $135,000.
Wow.
So I really would love to crack that $200,000 mark. So right now I'm really hoping that we could figure out a way to raise $70,000, over the next couple months as we try to round up the year.
I'd like you, if you could, though, to tell us about the matching fund, because I don't think we really pushed that enough, did we? The fact that if somebody gives even $50, whatever it is, or $25, whatever the number is, the matching fund will literally effectively double it, wouldn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, and we didn't really push that too much. I seem to remember at the time, and that's a really worthwhile thing for people to know that whatever they give, the ATC will get twice as much as that, which is quite something.
Yeah, it is great, and I blame myself for sort of letting the focus on the fundraiser slide a little, but I got to be honest. It took most of my energy to hike the hike, and I wasn't in a position very often to try to blog or make phone calls or even send emails or to rally the troops to try to capture some opportunities to raise money. And it really was like the old out of sight, out of mind. And every once in a while I would think about it, but I just didn't have the time, opportunity, the energy to put towards it. So I do blame myself, because I think largely I need to be the motivator behind some of the opportunities. So now that I'm back,
to be honest with you, I think I entirely understand that, because I know at the end of the day, hiking the AT is it's a tough day anyway. I mean, I've just done the Camino, and I was exhausted at the end of those days, and I was podcasting. But to be honest with you, I found that sometimes a bind to have, not to have to podcast, but to be able to podcast. So I think it's the energy, and I think it's the mental energy as much as anything, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. So, I'm not going to beat myself up over it, but now I'm here, and I appreciate the time on your show. And I guess, there are a bunch of listeners out there who've been really great about crossing over and listening to my podcast, or if we call it your podcast about me. And, if they love the AT and want to give something back, it'd be great if they, had an interest in going to my website, Returning to Katahdin, and go to the support page. And we'd be incredibly appreciative for a little help. And we've got a few little knickknacks and thank you gifts for people who give.
Yeah, one thing I wasn't aware of, and when I contributed mine, I got membership with the ATC as well. I think it's different levels, I guess. But I don't think people know that either. Really, there's not so much people are doing it because they want to get a gift. It was really nice to get membership of the ATC as part of my contribution.
It's almost at any level you give, you're going to get a membership with the ATC, which is great for so many reasons. The AT Journeys, I think, is a very nice publication, and I think you feel great about supporting the trail. Obviously, people who listen in each week have an interest in the trail, and we don't have a chance to follow people, encourage people, live vicariously through people doing through hikes, unless the trail is maintained well from year to year. So that was kind of the reason I picked them as a charity. And there's always challenges for entities like the ATC. And I'm just eager to try to bring this to a close, but do it in a way that will just do the best I can in this campaign.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I'll tell you what, and people are still listening to the show. There was 2 days last week where you had one day there was 194 downloads of your show, and the next day was 198 downloads. So people are still listening to it, and today is another 50 or 60 already. So people are still listening to the show at far greater numbers than I thought. So if you do love the Appalachian Trail and you do want to help this particular call, then as I say, as Bruce says, go to his site, I've forgotten it already, returning to Katahdin.com, and click on the support button, and there you can find a place to contribute, and Bruce will be very, very grateful for that support.
I will. In fact, there's actually 2 URLs that land in the same place.
Right.
One is returning to Katahdin.com. The other is rtkatchallenge.com, but they both will end up at the exact same place.
Okay.
I'd be very appreciative, and keep listening to Mighty Blue.
I appreciate that. Well, okay, Bruce. Well, thanks for coming back, and I'll certainly put the links to both those. As you say, it's the same place anyway, but I'll put a link in the show notes, and keep in touch. Let me know what happens.
Yeah, we've got some other things to do, and as you know, I'll be down in Venice a couple of times, and you're probably not going to be far away.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, you take it easy, all right?
All right.
Cheers, then.
Here, appreciate it, and be well. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, and you. Well, I'm having that Thanksgiving in England, and trust me, they don't celebrate it over here. All right, I'll speak to you soon.
All right, take care.
Then. Bye. So please, if you're thinking about supporting the trail and you want to get behind the critical work of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, head on over to returningtokatahdin.com and click on the support button. As we mentioned, every dollar that you give will be matched by the matching fund, so the ATC will get double your contribution. That's got to be worth something. Next week, I'm going to start my series of the class of 2019 with one of the fat guys and gals back in the woods, Nate Stockton. I met Nate during the 2017 trip and had many a laugh with him. He's an engaging, chatty bloke who I'm hoping to spend some time hiking with on the trail next year. Nate's will be an introductory conversation with another 4 or 5 filling out the show in subsequent weeks. Hope you're going to enjoy hearing from these adventurers. Now, the year we seize the day, the book I'm reading with my niece Laura. Laura and I keep rushing these episodes out at the very last minute. She told me this week that she's expecting her second child, so while of course I'm absolutely thrilled for her, I'm kind of encouraging her to knock out a few episodes at a time, just in case she has a bad week. She always comes through though. I'll see you next week. Chapter 17, Day 16. From Mr. to Carrion de los Condes. Colin. Buen camino, you thieving bastards. There are 2 sounds distinctive to my memory of the Camino. One is the rhythmic click, click, click of a walking stick clipping on the cobblestones of a village street or a stone path as another pilgrim passes. Sooner or later, every peregrino of every age finds themselves a walking stick. When you're heading down a steep hill with 10 kilos on your back, they are no longer a pose but a very practical accessory. The other sound is a shouted Buen Camino. As the cyclists go past, they shout Buen Camino. When another pilgrim sets off from the albergue, everyone shouts, Buen Camino! Bon voyage, safe trip, have a good way today, hey? Leaving from Mr. next morning, we shout Buen Camino to the usual suspects as well as others we will never see again, like Bill Candy, a Spaniard we think is from Barcelona, or who may be Barcelona itself. He is massive, a suburb on the move at the very least. He looks as if he has a beanbag stuffed up his T-shirt. His wife helps him haul ass, sometimes literally, up the hills. He's the sort of man you cannot imagine walking further than the kitchen to fetch another bag of Doritos. But like every good Catholic, he has come this year to make a pilgrimage to St. James and reserve his seat, and 2 other people's, in heaven. He only walks 10 kilometres a day on his doctor's advice. On the other end of the fitness scale is Heidelberg, strong and blonde, Hitler's Aryan dream, except he has a great sense of humour. He walks 40 kilometres every day, blitzkriegs it. He has a smile and a nod for everyone, except the French. We have noticed that the French keep pretty much to themselves on the Camino. Hard to thaw. I talked about this with Heidelberg the night before. Those bastards, he scowled. If you can't speak French, they don't want to know you. They think they're the speciality of Europe. The speciality of Europe? He says this is why Germany keeps invading them. It has nothing to do with the Treaty of Versailles or Lebensraum or any of the stuff my history teacher told me in school. Living next to these arrogant bastards, he says, is too much for anyone. In the end, you just want to invade them to piss them off. Buen camino, Heidelberg shouts as he heads across the courtyard, smiling and waving at everyone as he leaves. Then he sees 2 French guys and gives them the bird. A united Europe? One day, but not yet. Austria, Forrest Gumpenberger, is last to leave and she is distraught. This morning she is not grieving for her mother but for a walking stick. It has been with her since Linz, and this morning it disappeared. Someone has stolen it. A pilgrim looking for redemption from St. James has stolen another pilgrim's walking stick. I find it hard to get my head around that one. Already the atmosphere on the Camino has changed. Until now, fellow peregrinos have been going out and leaving their mobile phones on charge, as pilgrims have been doing throughout the centuries. Yesterday, 2 went missing. The level of trust among pilgrims has been remarkable until now. The theft casts a pall on the day. Something more has been lost than Forrest's walking stick. We pass a village with fall-down adobe cottages side by side, newly built square houses that look like they were scooped up from a housing estate in Milton Keynes. They are built from ginger-coloured brick and all have window boxes with bright petunias. But there are no shops. A man comes around honking his horn, selling vegetables, washing powder and bread out of the back of his van. Meals on wheels. In a dark bodega off the plaza, the old men sit with their shots of black coffee, staring at a TV above the bar where a primped Barbie doll in Madrid tells them the football scores. Outside the village are other bodegas, caves cut into the hillsides with arched doorways and little air vents that stick out of the ground so that it looks from a distance like a Disney village of munchkins. This is where wine is made and stored. It would not be possible to live on the Meseta without alcohol. Or soft drinks, apparently. There are bright blue Pepsi machines in the humblest of villages. They are built into the sides of 1,000-year-old walls, chained like guard dogs in the middle of every deserted plaza. Another 5 years, and my best guess is the way will have a Mac Camino and a Starbucks Peregrino. My feet are healing. It's fascinating to take the dressings off every night and watch my foot mend, see the little peninsulas of flesh pushing back into a lake of raw meat and start to join up again. The body is an amazing thing. Ellie's body is an amazing thing also. It keeps insisting she cannot do this, and she keeps insisting it is wrong. Her knee looks like a bright red water balloon, filled to near bursting. She has tendinitis, blisters, and the hematoma on the back of her calf has turned black. Finishing the Camino, getting to Santiago means far more to her than to me. It seems to me that it means more to her than it does to even the most devout Catholic. I am in awe of this without fully understanding it. I really want her to get there now. In some strange way, it will make it all seem worthwhile.
Ellie. Forget Frosty Famista. Thankfully, the distance from Famista to Carrion de los Condes is only 23 kilometres. That's 22.5 kilometres longer than Colin's temper today. One look at his face this morning tells me we're in for another tough day. The harder this gets for him, the more he tries to hide it. But he was talking in his sleep again last night. It's becoming normal now. All over Spain there are festivals in every town, every city. When the Spaniards say festival, they mean a chance to blame their hangovers on a saint. Today is the 25th of July, the Feast of Santiago. The shops are shut and the bars are open, full of men drinking caracuelos, coffee laced with a shot of very strong local brandy. The young are much more sensible about their drinking. They don't drink before noon, even on feast days, and when they do, it's just a moderate amount of calimochos, a cocktail of Coca-Cola and red wine, usually drunk out of a plastic glass the size of a saucepan, and never a drop more than 20 or 30 in a session. We enter the wreckage of a village called Poblacion de Campos. The whole population of Poblacion de Campos is pissed. The streets are peppered thick with broken glass and plastic cups. There is nothing like a festival honouring a great saint for an excuse to go out and stay out. A dozen or so 16-year-olds stumble from a bodega. It is 7:30 in the morning and they have been there all night. It reminds me how far removed we are from the real world. Only a few weeks ago, saying goodbye to friends, I was one of them, stumbling home in daylight. Now I'm a worn, smelly traveller in a strange land, smelling of cheese and carrying a big stick. How things change. We stop in for breakfast and coffee. A pack of pasty-faced teenagers try to pour calimocho onto us. At daybreak, they are still drunk and still drinking. So is their mother, who's attempting to run the bar. It's a comedy of errors. Colin and I are sober and obviously not from round here, so we become their novelty playthings. They reek and are as friendly as wet dogs. The boys gasp as we tell them we're from Australia. They cannot comprehend why we have come such a long way to walk across their country. What can I say? It seemed like a good idea at the time. They look at Colin and me the same way we looked at the bull runners in the San Fermin news footage. That's twice I've been called crazy in less than 12 hours. And strangely, I feel an odd sense of pride about it. Wheat plays somewhat of a cameo role today. So far, the morning has been spent on a quartz stone walking track running parallel to the roadside, which winds in and out of the odd town and village along the way. It's a pleasant change and seems to set the theme for the remainder of the day. Until we reach Revenger de Campos. Call me superstitious, but the name scares me. Sure enough, the change of scenery was merely a bluff, and before long, Return of the Fields has earned its reputation, and we're back among wheat. Yay! Never is the tension between Colin and me more fierce than it is in the middle of a wheat field. The aspirin I'd taken with breakfast wore away early, so I have the pleasure of pain to keep me occupied. His silence doesn't bother me as much as it did yesterday. Each step is growing more bearable. To help matters, I'm still walking with a hole in the back of my boot, and as the morning wears on, the sharp stab in my foot intensifies. It is obvious it is only going to get worse from here. I tell Col a joke to take my mind off things as he studies his beloved guidebook. His feet are healing well and his new sandals have helped the tendinitis. He tells me he feels fantastic, great, strong as an ox, brilliant, but doesn't want to rub it in. For a brief moment we trade jokes, a splash of colourful humour to offset the bland wash of wheat. But pretty soon the laughter subsides and silence returns. Don't ask. Please don't ask, not today. What are we doing here, El? Cruel bastard. Without saying a word, I shoot Colin a threatening glare and shake my head. He knows as well as I do that I have no idea. What he doesn't know is how guilty and genuinely sorry I am about it. If only I had known. It's a subject better left, so I do. One possible conclusion I've stumbled upon is that perhaps the Camino is like bungee jumping. A leap of faith that invokes a sensory overload so intense that it's only after the event, when your feet are healed or safely on the ground, that you can look back and realise what actually happened. Suddenly, why you did it in the first place isn't as important as the experience itself. Life often only makes sense to me in retrospect. Typically, while the most profound events and lessons are unfolding, I'm flailing around, disorientated and gasping for air like a hooked fish. You do your best to get through it at the time, then later you look back and realise why it all happened and what it all meant, and how the process changed you, for better or for worse. A sense of gratitude often eases the pain. I'm hanging on the hope that whatever is meant to happen out here for Carl and me is already happening, and that we will each figure it out once the Camino is long behind us. Until then, in the middle of Mesita, there's nothing more to do but put one foot in front of the other until you get somewhere else. Because of the consistency and the direction we're travelling, I've started to resemble a block of Cadbury's Top Deck chocolate turned on its side. Half brown, half white. The only time we're in direct sunlight is when walking. The rest of the day is spent in shade, or better still, indoors. As a result, the right side of my body is still winter white, while the left side is a distinctive tone of bronze mahogany. It's the summer Camino fashion. Two-tone is the new black and everybody's wearing it. With Carrion de los Condos on the horizon, we pick up the pace for the last hour, marching double time the remaining 6 kilometres into town. We passed the locked door of the albergue and held straight into the bar. Colin orders beers and I order 2 bags of ice, one for the knee and one for the foot. So how are you doing? I ask Colin, and this time he replies. He tells me he can't find sense in the questions these past 2 weeks have brought with him, and the further we go, the more questions arise. We discuss this briefly over our beers. After 20 minutes, he removes the ice from the side of my foot resting on the chair next to him. Jesus and Christ, El, you've got to get that looked at. He's right, but I'm not surprised. I felt it every step of the way from Framista. I hobble inside the bar, order 2 more beers and ask the barman for the nearest hospital. En familia? He says, pointing across the street. The feast day celebrations are in full flight. Colin wanders into the village centre to watch the street parade while I head to the medical infirmary. His name is Tibber. Tibber is a young, kind and gentle nurse with a beautiful smile and a great deal of empathy. Muchas ampollas, he says, smiling as he scrapes the grains of dirt from my blistered feet and bathes them in betadine. 7 patches, 1 gauze wrap. Noticing something I hadn't, he then happily digs out 2 ingrown toenails on both feet. 7 patches and 3 gauze wraps. Moving on, Tibber runs Voltaren into my knee and renews my script for anti-inflammatory tablets, advising I also stock up on aspirin. 7 patches, 3 gauze wraps, and 2 prescriptions. Finally, Tibber takes my right foot into his hands, pokes at the bulge, shakes his head and says something in Spanish that I ask him to repeat several times before we both give up. Mañana las cuatro sí, he asks, settling for an alternative sí? I reply, tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I got that much. Then Tibber binds my right leg in a temporary plaster wrap from knee to toe. Hang on, what's this? Mañana a las cuatro, he says again. Sí, I reply, but my only answer is a soft smile. The nurse then writes out a medical certificate for Colin and me to stay on the extra night in the albergue and orders no ande. No walking? But we're just days away from Lyon. You can't be serious. Until when? Tibber finally uses different words. Fractura, he says. Fractured? Are you sure? Mañana a las cuatro. He gestures to indicate a photograph. Oh, I say. X-rays. That's not good. 7 patches, 3 gauze wraps, 2 prescriptions, tendinitis, a swollen knee, a medical certificate, a day off, and possibly a fractured foot. Shit.
Colin, carry on up the Crusader. As the sun dips in the sky, the town of Carrion de los Condes prepares for the Feast of Santiago. Everyone in town, except for children under the age of 5, is going to get shit-faced. But first there will be a procession, and then a reenactment of 3 battles fought in the Middle Ages against the Moors. As I make my way towards the plaza, the players emerge from their houses. The Queen of Navarre jumps in a car to drive to the church. The Prince of Aragon runs back to his house to fetch the camcorder. The procession has already started at the end of the street, where the massed bands of the Ponferrada Bridge Club are marching into the plaza dressed as Moors. They are playing the theme tune from Titanic. From another street, I hear the sound of bagpipes. It's the King of Castile's pipe and drum band, dressed exactly as they were in 14th century Spain, in black kilts and Nike joggers. The king runs behind them while talking to his wife on his mobile phone, telling her he won't be late home. The King of Castile is a liar. The action soon removes to the park by the river, where the Battle of Ceuta is recreated for a crowd of Spanish tourists and wet kids who run over from the local swimming pool to watch. There are horses, flags, and pretend knights with pretend swords flirting with pretend virgins. After the battle, which ends with the King of the Moors giving the King of Castile what looks like a large stuffed budgerigar, the bagpipes lead the procession out of the square, playing a tune that sounds suspiciously like Britney Spears' Do It To Me One More Time. The whole shooting match moves back up to the plaza where another battle is reenacted. A man dressed as Santiago appears in the nick of time to frighten away the Moors and save the day. In this instance, Santiago acts like the homeless nutbag who once shouted at me under Waterloo Bridge. He is dressed like him too, except he isn't holding a dog tied to a bit of old rope, and his willy isn't hanging out of his trouser fly. There is more talking and proselytizing. The King of Castile starts reading from a script, holding the reins of his horse with one hand and droning on into a microphone held in the other. By this stage, the crowd and some of the participants are getting antsy. It's all been going on a little too long, and the adults need a drink and the kids want the ice cream they were promised if they were good. One of the Moors rushes over to the bar to get 4 more beers for the infidels. 2 of the more youthful warriors, there are about 4 and dressed like they have just stepped off a Star Wars set in silver lame and sequins, try to decapitate each other with swords. Mummy Moor has to step in and separate them. It is then time for the Moors to attack the Christians again and win, which is surprising as 2 of them are pushing prams with small children. The 2 4-year-olds don't really care that they have vanquished an army of Christians, they're just happy that their side won. They run across the square with their swords, beat up a little girl in pigtails and steal a bag of lollies. Meanwhile, 2 of the women stand over a fallen Christian warrior and take this opportunity, while the bishop isn't looking, to stick their swords in his bits. That's for sleeping with my sister. That's for standing me up last week, you piece of shit. The Moors are just Moors. They will invade you, murder your mother and enslave your children. But you should never, ever piss off a woman. We then all move on to the Catedral de Santa Maria, while the Moorish band plays something suitably Moorish, Alice the Camel. Another battle. Some of the Moors fight with bottles of San Miguel tucked into their armour. 2 youths pushing wheelbarrows with bulls' heads tied to them chase the Moors out of the churchyard. And that's it. The festival is over. It's time to head to the bodega for a beer and a smoke.
Ellie. Questions and answers. I spend early evening watching the sunset from the lawn outside the church across the road from the clinic and wonder if it's over. The news has changed everything. After all we've been through to get this far, has it really come to this? I'll have to return to the clinic for x-rays tomorrow afternoon to find out. Until then, with my leg heavily bound, there is nothing more I can do. As the sun slips slowly down the sky, the orange horizon smouldering low above the city reminds me of my grandmother, Mary. The most brilliant sunset I have ever seen set across the sky on the night she died. She was letting us know she was still close. I had been holding her hand moments before, then remained by her side for some time after she'd passed. We all did. 8 of us stood around her hospital bed, holding hands and cried together. She wouldn't let us cry while she was dying. She didn't want to see us sad, so we'd saved our tears for when we said goodbye. My grandmother was a magnificent woman who taught me many things, both in life and in death, but none of them more valuable than self-belief. "You'll be all right, love." That was one of the first and last things she ever said to me, a line I've heard many times since, and can still hear today. Her soft, sandy voice was so certain. It's funny, I believed her, despite my own doubts at the time, and those few simple words of assurance helped me through the years of uncertainty following her death. I look down at my leg and wonder if her memory might help me through again. Then something in the grass reflects off the sun and catches my eye. I reach to pick it up and discover a pendant, the size of a silver coin. But when I lay it in my hand and look more closely, I find it is not just an ordinary pendant. It is, in fact, a Virgin Mary of Miraculous Medal, a symbol I'd seen many times as a child, a Christian sign of protection. You'll be all right, love. And with that, I know I will.